Are you reassured by everything that you've heard on this panel and earlier today?
It's a tricky question. It sounds simple. Yes and no, I think. Yes, because we received a very clear political message from the leaders of the EU at Bordeaux that they are committed to the enlargement process and to the decisions made therein. This was a sentence that was not mentioned in the previous summits in Zagreb and in Sofia. And as we all know, this was the fourth summit between the EU and the region. The first one was in Thessaloniki when the vision was actually declared. The promise was made. And I very much appreciate Joška reminding us, if I may use first names, why this happened. The peaceful political order of this region is tied to European integration. If we take out this goal, the promise, I think alternatives will come into play. And we've been there in the 90s. So united Balkans is only possible if we have a functional European integration process and a reaffirmed promise from Thessaloniki. Now, what's missing, in addition to the clear political message, is movement on the ground, action. What we have in the region in terms of action is the last chapter for Serbia was opened in December 2019. The last chapter for Montenegro was opened in June 2020. We have the decision for North Macedonia and Albania from March 2020 to start accession talks, but we are still not able to actually do that. So the EU has been struggling to deliver on its promise. We have the Commission and the European Parliament repeatedly saying that Kosovo delivered on their requirements to get visa liberalization, but this is still not really happening. And Bosnia and Herzegovina is still a potential candidate country. So to restore the faith of the people that this is actually possible, we need action in the region. It is not fair to blame the EU for this. EU is a complex organism. It has a commission with 30,000 people. It has 27 member states. It takes one to prevent a decision on this file, on enlargement. It's a consensus decision-making process. So I think in order to move and open this new chapter, restore the European momentum in the Balkans, we need our neighbors from Sofia to assume their responsibility. We talk a lot about common history, but we also have a common region, and we should have a common European future. So it is time to show leadership and responsibility, because all of us, we are losing the momentum in the Balkans. And to restore that and turn it around, a U-turn for the better, we should act fast. EU is by far our biggest partner, both politically and economically. The European Investment and Economic Plan, 9 billion euros in grants. At the same time, EU also gets a lot from the Western Balkans. The trade deficit in the last decade has been between 7.5 and 9.2 billions of euros. There is an international study that in terms of the brain drain, the loss of human capital, the region loses 5.5 billions of euros per year in terms of investment in education and potentially lost GDP growth. So economically, we are in the same boat. We are completely interlinked. We trade with the EU. 70% of the trade of the region is with the EU. EU invests between 3 and 3.5 billions every year in the Balkans. So there is an issue of repatriation of profits as well. We are in the same boat. When I listened to the Vice Prime Minister of Montenegro about the port of Bar and smuggling of cigarettes, this is a clear example why engaging and making this region more like the EU in terms of strong democracy, free media, rule of law, fighting corruption, etc., is actually far less costly than not engaging with the region. And because this is an Economist summit, I'd like to refer to a recent Charlemagne column that had the subtitle, "Bigger is still better," that exclusion is not a happy solution, and that if the EU has an ambition to become a global player, it has to become a local one first. We are surrounded by member states. If this region that is essentially called Western Balkans, to know that these 6 countries are still out, we need to be plugged in. If we have divergent policies, if we don't fight corruption, this is not good for the countries surrounding us. Migration, any challenge that the EU has faced in the last several years, we have a role. And this region played a very important role for the security of the European Union in 2015 and 16 in terms of the migration crisis. Often, the borders of this region were the external borders of the EU because of our simple geography. It is really high time to act. We also have our responsibility. Sometimes people argue that progress is not there because of lack of reforms. But in the case of North Macedonia and Albania, even the most strictest of the member states, the Netherlands, our Dutch friends, and their approach of strict and fair. We heard Prime Minister Mark Rutte at the doorstep at Brdo saying, it's time for this to happen. We had President Macron in one room with us and the President of Bulgaria, trying to help together with Chancellor Merkel. So even the strictest member states on criteria have no dilemmas that this should happen. And I think the stakes are so high for this region, for our government, for the friendship with Bulgaria, that it's time to assume leadership, responsibility, and do this. We have to have a reasonable European solution in line with the European standards that will also respect the dignity of the Macedonian citizens. Being a member state is not a free license to ask for whatever you want. There is a legitimate interest for every country to pursue their national interest, but this should be in line with the European values if we are talking about accession to the European Union. Thank you.